Now, with the recent season 4 airings, I know this information will be a bit much for some of you guys, but let's get through this together. Before any of that though, I'd like to let it be known now, this video will contain manga spoilers. Anime only fans, you've been warned. Alright, so before we talk about Nighteye, we have to first cover some things about All Might. Let's get into it. For the longest time now, we've been teased about the idea of All Might dying, and after seeing Night-Eye's foresight ability be wrong and his prediction that Midoriya would die and Overhaul would win, a lot of fans got comfortable. A lot of us, including Nighteye himself, saw it as Midoriya using his will to shape a more desirable future. You know, the typical shonen BS. But really, this wasn't the case. Most likely what really happened is that Eri's quirk Rewind caused an error in Night-Eye's prediction. When two time-related quirks interact, it's reasonable to conclude that something out of the ordinary might occur. Sir Nighteye up to that point had never been able to change the future that his quirk foresaw, and as viewers, it's illogical to allow this once-in-a-lifetime occurrence where Eri was present to discredit the accuracy of his quirk. If we're to allow this moment to tarnish the quirk foresight, then we would also have to throw out Sir Night-Eye's final words to Mirio about him becoming a great hero too. And I don't want to do that because like a lot of you guys, I too am dying to see that man return to action. All Might will die. There have been numerous cases of foreshadowing and this information has been clear to me for a while now. Initially, I wondered whether he would come back to relevance through regaining his powers in some way or through dying. The answer is clear now, All Might will die. The creator of My Hero Academia, Horikoshi himself, has said something outside of the manga that magnified my confidence in this theory. Prior to the airing of the anime, in an interview, when asked about what to look out for in the story, Horikoshi made it clear that My Hero Academia is the story of Izuku and All Might, and that he plans to make their story the main plotline. Their relationship is the vertical axis of the story, which he admits would cause the story to become very dark, and you know, if you've been reading the manga, you know that's true, causing him to set up a horizontal axis, the fun part. Basically, at its core, this is a story about Deku and All Might, and it's a dark one, and while at first it wasn't, it's very much become so, and I think everyone would agree with that. All Might isn't very relevant anymore. He's still a mentor to Deku, but Deku has grown up from being that helpless middle schooler we met in season 1. This has been proven many times, from him saying he's willing to leave UA if it means he can continue on his path to becoming a hero, and even again in the recent chapter when showcasing the results of his training, he didn't look back at All Might for approval. The boy is grown, he's been crying less, being more confident, and have you noticed that body transformation? Damn. I'll acknowledge that Horikoshi's vision and method of telling this story could have changed since again, this interview is years old. To me, it actually even feels like the story of Shigaraki and Deku, the successors of the world's greatest powers. At the beginning of the story, My Hero Academia looked like it was just going to be simply the story of One for All versus All for One. Now, things have changed since then, of course. All for One is in jail, and we have all these developments with the Nomu. Yes, we still do have the battle of One for All versus All for One, but accompanying that we have the Nomu and everything that it encompasses, whether that be its ties to Bakugo, Genist, or All Might. And if I'm being honest, that might just be me honing in on the part of the story I enjoy the most, but hey, I digress. All Might has even been falling in popularity polls for the series. The fans don't love the character anymore, or at the very least nowhere near as much as they did at the beginning. How can the story be about these two characters but one is popular and the other is forgotten by the fans? The story has always, and as of right now will always, go back to the relationship between All Might and Midoriya. Something is coming, and with all the death flags, it won't be a happy turn of events. Horikoshi has proven to be a savage. This man does not care. While Nighteye himself never held resentment against All Might for what happened between them years ago, at the end of the day, All Might regrets what happened. That regret will come to the surface again in a big way with the return of Nighteye. Allow me to tell you how. Shortly after that ungodly beatdown Deku gave to Overhaul, we were quickly robbed of that joyous victory by a tear-jerking scene of Nighteye on his deathbed. We hardly knew the man, but he was a great presence while he was a part of the story, and while fortunately he will return, it won't be pretty. Note that the last place we saw Nighteye was at a hospital, and if you've been keeping up with the manga, then you know our story's true mastermind, at least in my opinion, Dr. Ujiko, works at a hospital. And not only does he work in a hospital, but we know that the doctor and All for One are very familiar with stealing bodies before they're cremated. a practice they've done many times. This is something they did with Shirakumo and who knows how many others. While we don't know for a fact that Nighteye died in the same hospital that Dr. Ujiko works at, it's safe to assume that All For One and Ujiko were familiar with him. The reaction All Might would have to hearing about news like this would be dramatic. We already saw his reaction to finding out that Shigaraki was the grandson of his predecessor, and upon hearing that news, he was ready to go out the streets himself. Despite losing his quirk at that point, he was still willing to go out in the streets and go find Shigaraki and try to put a stop to this. Today he is still quirkless and weak and his body is frail. All Might is not in combat shape, but I imagine hearing about Nighteye being turned into a Nomu would break him, and I imagine that despite his current state he would still want to go and fight. And I imagine no sane person would let All Might suit up and get ready to go fight, but I imagine somehow he'll make his way to Nomu Nighteye. At this point in his life, he's already been through so much, especially in the last year. He's no longer the symbol of peace, he's no longer the tower that society was held up by. And not only that, but he had to then find out that the greatest threat to society right now, being Shigaraki, considering All For One's in jail, the biggest threat to society right now is directly related to his predecessor, somebody he considered a mother. Even if Ujiko doesn't work at this hospital, we know All For One and Ujiko have supporters all throughout the country. And especially since we know they love working with corpses, it's a safe bet to assume they would at least have one source throughout all hospitals in the country. If you've seen our Best Genius Nomu video, you know where this is going. Nighteye will be turned into what I call right now a perfected Nomu, meaning the type of Nomu that Kurogiri is, one with intelligence, personality, and a redesigned quirk. Even if it's not improved though, let's be honest, having that quirk on any team would be clutch. While I imagine Nomu Nighteye would be a perfected Nomu, as I call them, something like Kurogiri, it's possible that he could end up being used to make a high-end Nomu, one that still has personality, can talk, but it's more on the, I guess, wild side. They have multiple quirks that make the perfect fighting machine, instead of just one refined quirk. Now, if he's a perfected Nomu like Kurogiri, I'm not sure how much better you can make foresight. I mean, maybe you could increase the speed at which he sees his predictions. Maybe he can see farther into the future. Maybe he doesn't need to touch them anymore. Maybe he doesn't need to make eye contact. It's possible to of course make the quirk better, but can they make it busted? That's another question. Now, if Nighteye were used to create a high-end Nomu, that would be crazy. Imagine the high-end, the fight against Endeavor, but instead he's able to predict what's going to happen in that fight. That would be crazy. At that point, all you'd want to do is give this Nomu better movements, whether that be the ability to fly, increased agility, muscle enhancements, or even just simply limbs that are retractable and expandable. You'd want to improve its movement abilities, and besides that, I guess you'd want to make it more bulky, have more muscle, and be able to take a hit if it happens to be dealt one. If the death of All Might isn't coming at the hands of All For One, what would make for more interesting storytelling than a death at the hands of his close friend and former sidekick that predicted he would die? Nighteye was only present in the story for a short amount of time, and he was such a likable character. I think we would all appreciate a return, even if it's a grim one. I've said it in my previous videos, but right now the Nomu situation is really tied to Bakugo, with the information about one of his childhood best friends being turned into a Nomu, and also the fact that Best Genius will probably be turned into a Nomu. Right now the situation is very much linked to him, so having Nighteye, somebody that Bakugo's not familiar with, be turned into a Nomu would expand the relatability of the situation in a way, making others more closely tied to it. Midoriya, All Might, and the rest of the students that were present during that internship. We don't know all the details on how Ujiko uses corpses to make Nomu, for example the condition of the corpse, but if he could use Shirakumo, who was crushed under a rock, and most likely has some sort of brain damage, it makes sense that Night-Eye's corpse was in a usable state also. The death of All Might isn't something I'm necessarily looking forward to seeing, but I am excited to see what leads up to that conclusion. To Horikoshi, maybe that would be the end of the story of Deku and All Might, and the start of Deku's solo journey. It's also possible that Horikoshi just realized that having All Might around without much use is pointless to the story, and not what the fans want, evident by the popularity polls. But let's see what happens. I hope you enjoyed the video. I would love to hear your thoughts on whether Nighteye will return as a Nomu, and also your thoughts on All Might's death. For everything My Hero Academia, subscribe to the channel. From Plot Armor, I'm Young Kami J. Have a great day. Goodbye.